Time to now use some of the guidelines we just learned about colors and practice. And this is going to be a lot of fun, so let's get started. And let's start by quickly choosing a base color for our design. Now, of course, in the real world, a lot of thought needs to go into this decision, but we will just very quickly choose a color here just to see how it works. So there is a lot of green colors here in the pictures, like here. Here also this nice green in the plants, as well as here. And this entire chair or couch is actually green as well. Also, this small shop focuses a lot on health, like here or here. And so if you remember, the color green stands for nature, growth, and health. And so therefore, let's go with a green color. So something like this. So I will use one of the tools that I mentioned in the last lecture, and that is OpenColor. So the URL is this, which once again you will be able to find at my resources page. So here we have a lot of colors with the corresponding hex code. So gray, which we will come to a bit later. So we're looking for green. And so here we have like teal, green, and lime. So I'm not looking for this one. And actually, I think the one that I like is this teal. So this is, if you look at this here, at these pictures, then you see that teal is the one that more closely resembles the color that we already have. So we could now choose any of these, but this dark one here looks pretty nice to me. So I will just color this hexadecimal code. And then here in the comments, let's just write our color system here. So main color is this. And then it gets, even in the comments, nicely highlighted because of that VS Code extension that we installed. And remember that for our real world color palette, we would now go ahead and generate shades and tints for this color. Now in this case, actually the tints are already here. So like the lighter versions. So if we need one, we can simply go ahead and take one of these. All right. So let's just choose the gray now. And there's only one gray. So let's go with that. So this gray should be used for the text. And so I'm going to choose this one. I could also choose this one, but yeah, let's go with this one here. That one might be a little bit too light. And that's it. And from the hex code, you can actually see that these are not real grays, because if they were, then the first pair would need to be the same as the second and the third pair. Remember that? All right. But anyway, let's now actually use these colors. And the first thing that I'm going to do is to make all the text on the page gray. So using this gray here, copying it again. And remember that the color property is one that gets inherited. And so we can simply put that here on the body. So color, well, I had caps lock turned on. So color, giving it a save. And there we go. So that looks a lot more like it was actually designed, right? So that's really nice. So we are definitely going somewhere here with our design. And now it's time to take this color here and actually use it here on this link. So this link, we actually want to style it as a button. So where is that? Yeah, so here it is in button, and it also has this button big class here. But let's just start with button. And this should be reusable, so let's put it up here. And now remember how we should always use the pseudo classes of link and visited. since this is actually a link and not a button element. And it is not a button element because this is supposed to be a link that actually leads somewhere. So shop chairs will probably lead us to another page, which is then their online shop. So it's not a button because it doesn't do anything like, for example, opening a modal window. And so if it leads somewhere, it should be a link. And if it does something, then it should be a button. But also more about that a bit later in our main project. And now let's use our background color here. Well, that's not it. Now we need to grab it again here. Okay. And now let's give it the actual styles. So first of all, the color should now be white. So color FFF. We don't want the text underline. So that is text decoration, remember? And right now by default it is underline, but we want it to be none. So that looks better already. And now let's actually also turn it uppercase. So that's something common in buttons. And remember, that is text transform set to uppercase. Right. And now finally, let's give it some padding. So on the top and bottom, let's give it 16 pixels and left and right 32. And these values are coming from my spacing system up here, but I will not yet go into that system. Okay. So some space was actually created here, but this element didn't move down. So basically the distance here between this text and this one didn't change. And do you know why that is? Well, it is because this anchor element is an inline element, and on inline elements, the box model does not work as expected. Remember that? So basically, vertical spacing does not actually create new space. But that is what we want, and so we can set it to an inline block, right? It should not be block, because then it would occupy all the space that it can, like this, right? So this is not what we want, but we want inline block. And now there is some more space there, right? Now finally, let's just make this bold. And for that, we have our font weight of 500, I think. So here in the URL, we can actually nicely see it. So we have 400, 500, and 700 selected. And actually, if we now decide that we also want 600, we don't need to go back to Google Fonts. Instead, we could simply add a 600 here, then a semicolon, and then it would also load that one. All right, but we just want the 500 to make this text here just a little bit bolder. So font weight of 500. And yeah, that looks a bit nicer. And later we will also make this round, but for now we don't yet know how that works. Nice. Now, just about the font size, but then I also wanted to talk about the hover state. So usually when we hover a button like this, it might change its color. So it might turn lighter or darker. So in this case, let's just make it lighter, because that's one of the colors that we actually can just take from OpenColor here. But first, let's make the text a bit bigger. Let's keep these properties a bit together with the font. So font size of 18 pixel. Beautiful. And now let's get that lighter color here from OpenColor. So this is our usual color. And then as we hover the button, we might want to change the color to this one. So just a subtle effect, but let's copy it here. And then let's say button, hover, and button active. So always in this order. Okay. So background color, and then there we go. Let's check that out. And that looks beautiful. Really, really nice. Now there's just one thing that we should do here, which is to check the contrast between the background color and the text color. So remember that this is extremely important to make text accessible for everyone. So I will copy this hex code here, and then I will come to this tool that I mentioned, which is called Coolors. And one more time, by the time you're watching this, this tool might look different. But somewhere there must be this contrast checker here. Okay? And if for some reason that doesn't work, then just Google contrast checker and you will for sure find one of the countless tools that does this. So contrast checker, let's make the text color white. So that's FFF. Then here let's paste that. And you see that we have a contrast of 5. Now that's not perfect, but it is good enough for us. All right. And we could try the same, of course, with our text color. So there we have a white background. And by the way, you see that white on white is what a contrast of 1 means. So the worst possible. And yeah, so our contrast here is actually quite good, 11.5. All right, but anyway, this was just to show you how this tool works. All right, but let's go down because here we have some more buttons and these don't look all too well. And so let's change that. So maybe you remember that here we have the button class, but also the button big. And so this is basically like a variation of this button that we can now style differently. So we have button big, let's see. And then down there, here we have the button small. Okay, so this is a very common technique that we use when we write CSS, which is basically put all the command styles into one element or into one class, which is button in this case. And then the styles that are different, we put into one of these like variations. So let's create those. So that's button small and button, I think it was big. And I like to use 2 dashes here, but of course that's not really a hard rule. So what's going to change here between the big and the small button is the font size and also the sizing. And the sizing is defined by the padding here. And so let's grab these two, because these two are actually for the big button. And then for the small one, let's do something else. So let's save this for now. And so you see that our big button here still looks the same, and our small now looks like this. And so let's also give it some other font size. And remember, by default it is 16, but this actually looks too big. So let's put it down a bit to 14. Nice. And now give it some padding as well, but a little bit less than the big one. So 8 top and bottom and 12 left and right. Nice. That actually looks quite nice. So here we are done with the color. But since we are here, let's actually also change the color of this footer here. So remember how we made this text smaller because it is a lot less important than the rest of the text. And so let's continue that by also making the text lighter than the rest. So let's come again to open colors. And remember how the one we chose was this one. So let's now try maybe this one. So I'm copying it. And now the first thing I will do is actually to check the color contrast. So this one, oh, and here we only have 3.3, which is poor. So that we cannot use. Let's try to click here, adjust text color, but that's way too dark. So let's just then choose the next one. So that's maybe not as light as we wanted. And sometimes we might also be able to break these rules just a little bit. But here let's just very strictly stick to the rules. And so there you go. It actually looks almost the same, but well, anyway, let's just keep it like this so that we don't break the accessibility rules. Great. Now, remember that another thing we could do with colors was to accent one entire section, right? So that is something very common that we do with colors. And so that's what I'm gonna do now with this testimonial section here. So I'm pretty sure that's going to look amazing. So let's try that out. So first I want to know what this entire element is called. So it's the testimonial section. So it's this one. So background, color, and now VS Code is actually really nice to us because it already gives us here the most common used colors. So in this current CSS file, we have used these 4 colors, and so here it helps us choosing the same colors again. So this is our green color. All right, nice. Well, at least it's a start. But now we need to make the text white. So how should we do that? Should we select all of these 3? Well, I don't think so. And instead, we should simply make the color on this parent element white, and then all the other elements should be able to inherit it. So let's do that. Color to white, so FFF. And so that is a lot more readable, right? Now it looks a bit weird that the background color is not here around this image. And so let's just give it some padding here. So padding to the entire section, which will move everything a bit inward, basically. And so with that, it looks a lot nicer. And again, we will add some roundness to it later once we learn how that actually works. Okay, and now finally, as yet another accent, what I can do now is to add a final touch, which will be to add a green line here to the end of the entire page. So going from left to right all across the page. And so if I want that, I need to set it on the body. So right here. So border bottom. And I think we actually did this in our other project. So the web magazine. Solid, and then again our main color. And yeah, that looks nice. That's a nice final accent for the page and also a final accent for this lecture. Because with this, we are actually done, at least for now. And so therefore, we can now move on to our next lecture, which is going to be on images.